On the first day, their rations began to run out. Hawk had only a few protein bars left in his pack. Volkov demonstrated an old survival trick. He fashioned a small snare trap and after a few hours caught a snow hare. Hawk writes in his diary, "In this cold, food is not a luxury. It's ammunition for survival." Volkov roasted the hare's meat on stones. Hawk ate a small piece, but his mind remained on the mission. At night, the temperature fell to -40 degrees Celsius. Even inside Hawk's sleeping bag ice was forming. He wrapped cloth around his rifle's barrel so the metal wouldn't freeze to the ice. Volkov lights a cigarette and says, "In Siberia, the enemy is not the soldier with a gun. It is the cold. Lose focus, and it kills you quietly." The next day, Hawk noticed their canteens had frozen. Volkov taught a trick. Do not eat snow directly because it draws heat from the body. So they built a small fire and melted the snow into water. In Siberia, water is always taken by melting snow first. If a soldier eats snow directly, it can cause dehydration because the body uses extra energy to melt it. On the third morning, atop a snow ridge, they saw fresh boot prints, FSB. It meant someone was following them. Hawk immediately dropped to a prone position and adjusted his rifle's scope. After a while, 2 Russian soldiers crept through the snow scouting. Hawk's finger was on the trigger, but Volkov stopped him. "No shot. If you shoot, they will know we are here." In the taiga, silence is the real weapon. They lay motionless under the snow for hours until the soldiers left. Hawk realized that for a sniper, patience is also a bullet. In the evening, a sudden snowstorm hit. The wind was so strong their camp was blown away. Visibility dropped to 0. Hawk and Volkov found the remains of an old Soviet bunker and took shelter inside. Hawk writes in his diary, "The storm is worse than bullets. Bullets you can see coming. The storm blinds you, freezes you, and buries you alive." Volkov smokes. The smoke mixes with the air as he says, "This is not just survival, Turner. This is Siberia testing if you are worthy of your kill." After the storm, night fell and everything went quiet. But Hawk's eyes caught a gleam in the distance. A metal antenna. "Volkov, did you see that?" Hawk whispered. Volkov stubbed out his cigarette and frowned. "That's not natural. That's a field comms tower. FSB must be nearby." The forest was not only a test of survival. It was also an enemy's burned-out snare. In the morning, Hawk and Volkov found a small abandoned camp. The ring of fire was still warm. Someone had been there only a few hours earlier. Volkov picked up a cigarette half-burnt. "FSB patrol. Maximum 3 men. They move fast," he said in a low voice. Hawk checked the ashes with his gloves. They smelled of diesel. That meant the men had vehicles. 2 hours later, they found broken branches under a pine tree. Hawk lifted his scope and carefully scanned the area. Snow covered everything, but in one place clear human boot drag marks showed. Volkov said, "Soldiers make mistakes when they're tired. They leave marks. They're close, Turner. Too close." As evening fell, a thin radio static began to hum across the snow. Hawk pulled out his comm device, but the frequency was blank. That meant someone else was transmitting from another device. Hawk writes in his diary, "The worst enemy in Siberia is the one you cannot see, but you can hear." Volkov snuffs his cigarette and says, "This is psychological warfare. They want us to feel watched. And it's working." At night, they made camp by a frozen river. Through his rifle scope, Hawk saw a dark figure motionless in the snow at a distance. He half-pressed the trigger, but when he readjusted the scope, it was only a broken tree stump. Still, his heart raced. "Volkov, I feel like we are not alone," he said. In the morning, Hawk woke to find 3 new boot prints in the snow around their camp. They had been sleeping while the enemy came so close they left marks and walked away. Volkov quietly lit a cigarette and said only, "They are not chasing us, Turner. They are circling us. Like wolves." After hours of trudging through Siberian snow, Hawk peered through his rifle scope. The boot prints had become deeper. The cigarette filter they'd found near their camp kept appearing along the trail. Volkov crouched and examined the ground. These are not Spetsnaz. The heel is too worn. These are villagers. Simple boots. Hawk exhaled cold air. So what we thought? Maybe we were wrong? Maybe not FSB. Maybe just survivors. After another day's march, they reached a small Russian village. Snow-covered, old wooden cabins, a tiny church, and broken carts half buried in drifts. But there was one difference. Faint smoke rose from chimneys. Volkov said in a low voice, "People, still alive here, in this frozen graveyard." When Hawk and Volkov approached a house, the door opened slowly. An elderly woman stood there holding an old kerosene lantern. Fear was in her eyes, but she recognized them at once. Not Russians, Americans. Volkov spoke Russian, and soon more people appeared. Children, 2 or 3 men, and some women, all wrapped against the cold. Hawk realized this village was not an FSB trap, but a forgotten settlement struggling to survive. They were led into a small cabin with a stove burning. For the first time in days, Hawk felt warmth in his fingers. A child watched him with curious eyes. An old man asked, "Why you here?" "Forest not safe. Soldiers come sometimes." At that, Hawk and Volkov went on alert. FSB or the Russian army sometimes patrolled here. A woman placed an old map on the table and said in Russian, "Some men soldiers. They ask about strangers, about foreigner. They look north." Volkov pushed the map to Hawk. A red circle marked where soldiers were often seen, roughly near their mission's target zone. Hawk thought, "These people may not know everything, but they just gave us a piece of the puzzle." That night, as Hawk sat in the cabin smoking and thinking, he looked out the window. In the distance, a long shadow stood in the snow. Neither a villager nor Volkov. It melted quietly into the white, as if it vanished. Hawk only said, "They're watching us, even here." The hearth crackled softly. For a while, the only sound inside the cabin was the hiss of burning wood. Hawk held out his frostbitten fingers to the flames, trying to bring life back into them. After a pause, Volkov broke the silence with a blunt question to the old man. "Why are you helping us? What difference does it make to you whether we live or die?" The old man lowered his eyes. Scars on his hands glistened faintly in the firelight. In a voice roughened by years, he answered, "We've lost too much already. First in wars, then to the lies of governments. Now there's only one reason left. We don't want more blood spilled. Soldiers, FSB, army, all of them bring nothing but ruin. If you're against them, then you are our guests." Hawk listened carefully. He glanced at Volkov, muttering under his breath, "He's not telling us everything. He's hiding something." Volkov leaned in, pressing the old man in Russian. "But aren't you afraid? If the FSB learns you helped foreign soldiers, your entire village could be erased." The old man smiled faintly. "Son, when life is reduced to stale bread and breathing in frozen air, the fear of death dies with it." That night, Hawk noticed the old man locking an ancient wooden trunk again and again, as if some secret lay buried inside. And just then, beyond the frosted window, Hawk caught a glimpse of a shadow. Neither a villager nor Volkov.